me here in this mess. I'm stuck here. How could this be glorifying you? How can this be advancing the gospel? Well, as we start in chapter 27, this era, this window of opportunity, Jerusalem and Caesarea, this segment of time comes to a close. It comes to a close. And so what's interesting to me is God lets him know, okay, not only did you go to Jerusalem and all this has happened, but you're going to go to Rome too. And that's when he calls out and says, I demand to go be seen before Caesar. And God lets him know this is going to be part of what is ahead. So God gives him this vision. But this chapter, in this little segment of time, it comes to a close. And so as I'm reading this, and chapter 27 starts here in just a minute, God starts speaking to me about the chapters in our life that he takes us through, and one ends and another begins. One ends and another begins. Now, we have, I would say, if you looked at your life and you had demarcations, maybe you had when when you're young, and then, wherever you met the Lord, and then, maybe were in high school or college or got married or had kids, or then your kids grew up and you had your, life at work, and then maybe you retired, and this is the next chapter, and you got all these little segments here. So we have those big, or I say little segments, a lot of times those are big segments of life. And then we have these micro segments of life of each day. Each day is a segment. And he was talking to me, and he's sharing with me, and he's letting me remember of how life is fluid. It's fluid. It's always changing. I shared last week, I talked about the sunrise and seeing God in the sunrise and stuff. And a lot of times God uses nature to speak to me, for me to experience him. And so, I just picked out a picture, and as pretty as that picture is, it's never as pretty as when you actually see it in person, is it? You can't capture it as good as your camera can be. Jan and I had gotten a chance to go to Hawaii a time or two, and if you hadn't done that, put that in your bucket list. It's pretty amazing, because there is no photograph that can capture the color. There's no pink that's as pink as when you're looking at that pink, and there's no green that's as green as when you're looking at the green there, and so forth, and I can't help but look at all that stuff and just go, wow, God is amazing. So let's think of this sunrise, okay? And so I was sharing with you, just last week, and had several mornings this week where I got to experience. So I get on 2869, and you've got these orangish colors down here at the rim of the horizon, and then it's this reddish color, and then the blue, the light blue, and then the deeper blue, and I'm just going, man, that's amazing. And by the time I've gotten past Harmony School, it's different. I'm thinking, that's crazy. That is crazy. And by the time I'm at school, the sun's up. Many times. And I've often thought, man, I wish we could just freeze that one picture that was just blowing me away. And he lets me know, no, that's not how I do it. That's not how I do it. Because for God, it's never enough. That moment when I was going, oh, that's awesome. That's just part of who he is. And so were all the other phases. It's just part of who he is. And he's always creating, and he's always, when it's favorable to me, and set up camp, and he's going, no, there's no life in that. There's no life in that. If I could stop it, it would die. Because the life of it is him. It's him. And he is. He we say was and will be, and he just is. I am that I am. There's no past tense or future tense. He just is. And it doesn't get better. It just is better. That's just who he is. So we look at this in life, and this sunrise idea, all this is a metaphor of something that's just a glimpse of who he is and how he works in our life. Okay? So this beautiful moment or whatever, that I'm referencing, and then it changes into something else. It's God changing chapters. God's moving in our lives. And we're like, we come to the end of one chapter and maybe we're going, no, I don't want it to end. Or maybe sometimes we're going, God, get me out of this chapter. I can't get out of it fast enough because I don't like it here. In either place, he is. He is there. And he's no less loving us, and he's no less real. And so we see in chapter 21, verse 1, it says, when it was decided that we would sail for Italy, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. Okay, so this time of being stuck, if you want to use that way of describing being in Caesarea, comes to an end. It comes to an end. And he's handed over to this Roman leader named Julius. Okay? And God's changing the chapter. The window of opportunity in Caesarea is ended. It's ended. I think it's very important for us to be cognizant of where we are right now. Right now. And who God has put around you. And what it is that he's wanting you to do right now. Because at some point, that window of opportunity will close. It will close. There were times raising kids, I was like, Lord, whew, it's time for them to get out of the nest. That kind of thing. But then that ended. And it's gone. And that segment of life is over. And there were blessings and special times, and there were difficult times, but it's done. Never to be replayed. Okay, maybe they come in and stay or whatever, but it's all different. It's never the same. Wherever we are to be making the most of what he has given us now. And appreciate now. The military talks about be where your boots are. Let's say spiritual understanding that comes out of Colossians 3:23. It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as unto the Lord, not men. Wherever you are, get at it. Because there's a purpose. There's a reason you're right where you are. And he's doing something now. And we need to appreciate that. So then, this window closes and a new chapter begins. All right, so Luke is chronicling this event. He's the one who is writing this letter of Acts. And when he says, we boarded a ship from Adramyttium to sail for ports, he's talking about him too. He got on the boat. We did this. He was there. We boarded a ship from Adramyttium about to sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. Okay, now I put a map up here so you can kind of follow along. So they're going to leave Syria and go to Sidon, and from Sidon they're going to go. Okay, so that's kind of the first portion of this journey. Now, it's not going to be easy. Now, I've not sailed much on a catamaran of whatever, but it's not like I'm a sailor. I've been out in the sea and gone through horrifying storms and stuff. But we get the story from Luke of what they went through. And it's more than a ship tale. You know, this is more than just well, and this was our vacation last summer. You know, that's not what this is. God is sharing with us things that affect you and me in our lives right now in this journey. Okay, so he's in this next chapter of life. They're on this trip. Now, I want to use a few pictures here to create some images to help us get some concepts. Okay, so this trip, this voyage that they're about to take on, we're going to look at it like life. All right, we're going to look at it like life. All right, so let's say you're at the top of a hill. Okay, you are here, up there at the top, and let's say you're wanting to go home, and this is your home. So the fastest route down, you know, gravity could take over and get you down there pretty quick. Might not be a good landing. Okay? That's probably not the route we need to go. And yet, it's right there. It's right there. Now, you see home, you see the vision of what it's like, you feel the warmth and how wonderful that would be, but I'm here, and there it is. And in order for me to get there, I'm going to have to take a journey that isn't necessarily the shortest, quickest way. No, in fact, it probably is going to look something like that, where we work our way there, further away, in order to have to journey through places. It's kind of like, life. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say you journey far away, it doesn't necessarily mean that's not the old, you got to sow your wild oats. No, that's a lie from the enemy. No, that's not what I'm talking about there. It's that maybe I don't feel home as much. Maybe it's harder to see right now where I am. God allows those times in our lives to draw us closer to home. Okay? God allows. He knows the exact route that is necessary for me on the journey that he has called me to. And he knows the exact route on the journey that he has called you to. And you think about, that moment where you met him and you felt so close and it's like God was so real. And then there's times in your lives you're like, I don't know where you are. I can't feel you. I feel lost. You know, you're out here on that curve out there somewhere way out there, and you can't see the house because you're in the forest. And yet God's bringing you closer to him. Because it's not based on how you feel. It's not based on what we see. It's where faith comes in. It's where he's growing us to trust him, even when we don't see it, even when we don't feel it. This I know, because his word says this, because he says he never leaves me and never forsakes me, because he has promised that his Holy Spirit is inside me, not because my circumstances look great. I know he's drawing me closer. I can be confident of that fact. This concept, C.S. Lewis talks about this in the book called The Four Loves. And he references this, him and see him or have characteristics of, and then sometimes in order to get closer, you feel like that. And you're out there somewhere. And he's bringing you to him. Okay, so we get to the bottom or the second part of verse 2 of chapter 27. And he calls by name a guy named Aristarchus. Okay, and he says Aristarchus. Luke mentions him by name, Aristarchus. He's a Macedonian from Thessalonica, and he's with us. All right, so we're on this journey. We get in the ship, and here we go. And then he mentions him. Why? Because on this route, on this journey, there are people for us to meet. This man had to come into the kingdom. He's a convert. He's a Jew who is a convert to Christianity. And not only did he need to come into the kingdom, but he's going to be one of those guys that's going to get in the foxhole with Paul when it gets real hard. And God's going to encourage Paul through Aristarchus. You see, there are times in our life that God leads us through a difficult time in order to let us know who are the dudes in our life. Who are the people that I can go, oh, I know I can count on them. Because when it got hard, they didn't leave. We take a look at Aristarchus. He's a convert from Judaism. He was Paul's companion during the riot in Ephesus that we read about back in chapter 19, verse 29. So they come there, just because he's a companion of Paul's, they get him and they arrest him in that big riot where they're all screaming, Artemis is the, queen of Ephesus and all that, and they're screaming and yelling, and I mean, it's a mess. And he got arrested because he was a buddy of Paul's. Now, that happened, you'd think, well, he might go, yeah, Paul's nice knowing you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I know him. Yeah, I've met him, Or, no, I don't know who he is. Not Aristarchus. Aristarchus gets on the ship with him when he's arrested. Right now. He goes with him to Rome in 27:2. He goes with him to Jerusalem in chapter 20, verse 4. This guy is a true friend. He's one of those guys that when there's a foxhole, he's jumping in. God's given me people like that. One of them is my wife. My wife, I'll just say, when I was young, I noticed how pretty she was real quickly, and that was a big part of being attracted to her. You know what? I can tell you at this point, the thing that I love most about her is her grit. How about that? When you're 16, go, well, what's the thing you like about them? I think they have grit. I wasn't thinking about that at that time. I was thinking, man, she's good looking, But as your life moves on, having somebody who doesn't quit when it gets tough, oh my gosh. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. There were times to quit. Things got rough in our household. Things got rough in her life. She could have died. If she had quit, she would have died. I know that. It got that hard, and she didn't quit. Man, I love that. I know she'll get in the foxhole. My mom, my mom, she doesn't quit. Things got is her and me and my brother, and she didn't quit. And she never quit. I've told the story. Those of you who are new, you get to hear it again. Get to hear a new one. Those of you who've heard it 6 billion times, you get to hear it again. So, we didn't have much. So we'd eat pancakes multiple nights a week. The kind you put water in, So what did she do? She'd have food coloring with green. One night we'd be like green pancakes. The next night we'd have blue pancakes. And we'd have red pancakes. Me and Neil, we didn't know. We were like, yeah, we got red pancakes. We didn't know any better. There's an attitude that was being taught there. You don't quit. I got people in this room who have been there with us when it was hard. It was hard. And you see the ugliness of life, and you see us when we're weak and beaten down and barely hanging on, and you're right there. That's what Aristarchus was to Paul. It's an amazing gift that if we had never gone on that journey, you'd never even known. You'd have never crossed paths. Or maybe you'd meet them, and how would you have opportunity to know that they would be there for you unless you went through something so hard? blesses us in ways that we don't even understand. And he does that with Aristarchus with them. So we go back to verse 3 in chapter 27. It says, the next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so they might provide for all his needs. You know, I don't know, there's not too many Roman centurions that were known for their kindness. That wasn't their speciality. You know, we take this for granted that, oh yeah, you know, it's just what you do, and that's what the centurion. No. These were prisoners. They're scum. Their lives were only worth keeping because they were tied to them. But if after when we have the shipwreck and the soldiers are like, just kill all of them because we don't want to get in trouble. If one of them gets away, we might get killed. Now, God is working in Julius. And in the midst of difficulty, God gives gifts along the way. And his favor is upon Julius in spite of the standing of centurion and prisoner. In spite of Roman citizen, you know, a secular Roman versus a Jewish Roman citizen. All those things, God begins to work, and he allows people to take care of him. So Luke continues to write in 4 and 5. From there we put out to sea, and again we passed to the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. Okay, we begin to see, yeah, this journey is tough. You know, we have a saying that, oh yeah, we got smooth sailing now, right? Where does that come from? It comes from people who traveled on the sea. And their journey went well, so they had smooth sailing versus when it wasn't smooth sailing, which was typical. So they pass along the Sea of Cyprus, which you see here in the map where that is, and they're going to try and get under it to protect themselves from the difficulty of the travels. Verse 5, when we had sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra and Lycia. In Lycia, okay? So he's telling us the details of their trip. You know, it'd be like you writing out, you know, in this letter, and, you know, then we got to Terrell and stopped at Buc-ee's, you know, and whatever the case may be. He's telling what's going on. All right, so we move on to verse 7 and 8. He says, we make slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off Cnidus. When the wind did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee of Crete opposite Salmone. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Haven. So, multiple things in here are going. I feel like you're working through life where you're making slow headway in relationships, in your job, maybe even in your spiritual walk. Or we feel like, man, it's like we're fighting against the wind here. You know, I'm trying, I'm straining. And he goes on and he says, we move along the coast, how? With difficulty. There are things that are going on that are challenging them. And you think, why does God always do this? Why does he let it? Why do we do that? Well, it's because we don't learn real good other ways. You know, if he was on the Royal Caribbean, eating all he wanted all day long and getting on water slides and, you know, whatever else they do on those things, I bet they wouldn't be crying out to God quite the same. Okay? So God allows us to go through these things. He allowed Paul and Luke and Aristarchus to go through these difficulties. So verse 9 of chapter 27, much time has been lost. We're off our time schedule. Much time is lost. How many times do we get frustrated about how, you know, I don't know. You know, I do. I like being on time. I want things organized. There's a lot of logistics that go on in my job. And when we get behind, I get angry. I don't like it. You know, I feel like we've missed out on opportunities and so forth. And so much time has been lost. And he says sailing had already become dangerous. So we moved from difficult to dangerous. We read through this and we're just like, yeah, you know, and it was difficult, and yeah, it was dangerous. We act like this is nothing. Their lives are at stake here. We're so used to everything being easy. We just get in a car and drive wherever, and, you know, we have policemen that watch and make sure people don't come, you know, hurt you. We have people we can call like John, that if something happens, you can call them and they come fix it and help you and all that kind of stuff. We have all these things set up for us. They're in danger when they go out there. Danger of whether or not they live or die. I don't know if you've been in a situation like that, but man, does it wear on you. It's exhausting. Exhausting when you're in danger, because 10 minutes saps out such an amount of adrenaline. You can get dehydrated so quick. Your body starts functioning poorly at that point, because you're feeling the stress of danger. And that's what they're dealing with. So sailing had already become dangerous by now. It was after the Day of Atonement. So we're moving into a time period where storms are normal. We're getting into storm season. We've seen what storms can do and the havoc that they can have on places and ships and people and so forth. So we get to verse 10. And we look in verse 10 and we see a guy that in the midst of all that is going on, he knows God's still in charge. God's still in charge. Now, get Paul out of the category of, well, yeah, but that's Paul. You know, get him out of that category, because he's just like you and I. Now, the reason we can say, yeah, but that's Paul, is because he chose to believe in the one that he met. And he chose to stand on the things that he told him. And you and I have that exact same opportunity. We have the exact same. Verse 9 and 10, it says, so Paul warned them, tells the other people, he says, men, I can see our voyage is going to be a disaster. Woo, how about that? I bet everybody stood up and high-fived and everything else. I'm just telling you the truth, man. Our voyage is about to be a disaster. I'm sure they're all looking at each other going, what? It's going to be a disaster. And it's going to bring great loss to ship and cargo and to our own lives also. That's a hard word. Who wants to stand up and give that word? You know, that's a tough one. But God is telling them why? To wake them up from thinking they're invincible. To wake them up from, you know, he's talking to strong Roman soldiers who are the fittest. They're the Navy SEALs of now, you know, these centurions and the regiments of Rome. He's talking to hardened sailors who have been through storms and gone through things. Oh, we can handle this. We've been through storms. No, and he goes, no, let me let you know, men, this voyage, it's going to be a disaster. And it's going to cost us cargo, and it's going to take a toll on us. Why would God tell them that? To give them the chance to call out to him. To give them a chance. That's like as God begins to share with you to let people know around you, hey guys, this world, just letting you know, it's all going to burn up someday. Just so you know, this stuff with people in the Middle East and all that, yeah, I've already read the end of the book. It's not going to go well. And if you don't know him, it's really not going to go well. Forever. Because it gives people the opportunity to get right with him. So we see in 11 and 12, it says, but the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul has said, follows the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. So, you know, God, we've already seen, God's been working on Julius. He's had his hand on him. Julius, this guy's different. This guy's different. Doesn't say Julius is a believer, But we see the favor of God upon Julius to take care of Paul. And yet, even though when Paul stands up and says, hey, man, this is the way it's going to be, he's looking at him, and he's listening to the captain, and he's looking at him, and he's listening to the captain. And when push came to shove, he listened to the captain. He took worldly advice instead of what God was saying. Now, we can look at that and go, that's stupid, Julius. Good gosh. How many times a day do we do that? How many times a day do we take the advice or listen to the voice of the world, listen to the mantra that is going on right now every day? Nothing can be done. It's all lost. There's no hope. Everything's falling apart. You know, all that kind of stuff. All of that, instead of, what is God saying? And I'm going to stand there. I'm going to stand there. Well, he doesn't listen. In verse 12, it says, since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided we should sail on. So when you look at reason, they're going, you know, this place that we're at, it's not really a good place to spend the winter. Now, if you're looking at the alternative of we're going to lose all our cargo and maybe our lives, staying in a less hospitable harbor is probably a good idea. But they've not accepted that that's truth. And so to them, they're like, this isn't really a great place to spend the winter and so forth. So, yeah, it's not suitable. So the majority decided we should sail on. The majority, you know, I don't know how many people barely pushed them over. No, we need to go. Hoping to reach Phoenix and winter there. This was the harbor in Crete, facing both southwest and northwest. Verse 13, when the gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity, so they weighed the anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. And they're all going, see, we got this. We're good. We're good. See, I told you we need it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just being dramatic. You know, we're all good until they're not. Until they're not. So we look in 14 and 15, and the storm hits. The storm hits, the northeaster. And it says, before very long, a wind of hurricane force called the northeaster swept down from the island, and the ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind. So we gave way to it and were driven along. Now we look at this and we have to go, you know, okay, you know, like I said, I've not spent much time on the sea. I've not had that happen. Thank God. But I've been hit by storms. I've been hit by storms. And there's times when those storms hit you, you're driven along. You're not in charge. You know, when the doctor told Jana and I, you know, she has a 95% chance of kidney cancer. You're not in charge. That ain't no good. You know? When the copperhead bites your wife on the leg and you're spending 5 days, she's spending 5 days in critical care. That ain't no good. You know, you're watching her leg turn black, moving up, you know, to her leg, up to her knee. And you're going, Lord, please let that stop. Please let that stop. And, you know, you're going, what about this snake venom thing? You know, what? I mean, the antidote. Don't that? Well, we have it. Costs $250,000 a shot, and, you know, or something like that. I don't know, 25,000 or 200. What's the difference? And, you know, a shot, and it might work, but then for some people it's worse than the snake bite. We're in 2000 and whatever year that was, 16, 17, and that's the best we got. The storm hits, and you're being driven along. You're not in control. You're caught in it, and it's taking you somewhere. And you find out if I trust him or not. You find out. All the areas of my life that, you know, are a little wishy-washy and weak and all that, that gets exposed. And you have to come to that place of, okay, God, no matter what the outcome is, I trust you. I trust you. He continues in 16 and 17. He says, as we passed to the lee of a small island called Cauda, we were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure, so the men hoisted it aboard. Then they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together, because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars of Syrtis. They lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. So as I'm reading through this, I've highlighted things that stood out to me. So they're trying to hold it together. Yeah, when you're in the midst of this and you're getting driven along, you're trying to hold it together. I still have to go to work. I still got to, we still got to go to the grocery store. You still got to somehow interact with people, and people are going, hey, how you doing? And you're going, well, life sucks, but I don't want to say that all the time to everybody. Quite frankly, it's terrible, but, have a great day. You're trying to hold it together. And it says, because they're afraid. We can posture all you want and go, yeah, well, I don't get scared and all that. Well, then you hadn't really been in a storm. Because when you get in one of those dudes, you're scared. Because it's bigger than you, and you're not in charge. And they don't always end up how we like them. through 20, it says, we took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw cargo overboard. It's amazing how the constant, chronic pain and challenges, it makes you do all kinds of crazy things. I mean, you get desperate. You start doing all sorts of stuff. All of their livelihood, everything that they've invested into this trip and this ship, it doesn't matter anymore. It's not a matter of how much money they're going to get or lose or whatever. They don't know if they're going to live. They're like, get that stuff out of here. If that's giving us one more inch down that the water can come over the side, get it off the ship. They took such a violent battering. Verse 19, on the third day they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. So now our ability to sustain ourselves is gone. We've already thrown the cargo over. Now we're throwing our tackle over where we can fish and try and live and so forth. We may not even make it through this storm. Why are we worrying about that? Verse 20, when neither the sun nor the stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we who's writing this? Luke, right? We all gave up. Luke. We finally gave up all hope of being saved. Not just the non-believers and all that. It looks like it's over. I don't see any way out. That's where they were. You think of Jesus and the disciples, and we think of, when he's up in the stern and he's asleep, and they run up and they go, Jesus, save us. And he stands up and says, peace, be still. And it goes, whew. You're like, God, I'm asking for that. I'm asking for you to calm this storm. Now, I believe, I have faith, you can do that. But he doesn't. Does that mean he can't? No, he could. It means he let it continue. Now, that's when our brain goes, wait a minute. I don't get this. I don't understand. How does this work in the big scheme of things? And how is this good? And how does this benefit anybody? And we're just all going to drown out here? We're all going to. What good comes of that? And what we have to do is go, if that's what he saw fit to happen, then there's a reason. I don't know it on this side of heaven. I don't know. There are things that have happened in my life and in your life that we can go, I don't get that. I don't get it. But here's what I do get, that he knows a lot more than I do. A lot more. He's called God, and I'm not. And on this side of things, we are called to trust him in the middle of the storm. And in this season of your life, I'm betting that you got some kind of storm going on in your life, because pretty much every season of life does. Some are harder than others. I mean, I'm not kidding. I thought that. I didn't like it. It was embarrassing. We were getting our teeth kicked in. It wasn't the hardest day of my life. Been through harder ones. God allows us in these times. And so as I look at these storms, there are things that we can gain, things that we can grab hold of. And we're gonna study the rest of the trip as we move into next week. So what are we going to grab hold of today? There were a couple of things that came up in this portion of the storm. One is fear, and one is they lost all hope. And so we have to look and say, okay, what does God say about those things? What does he say? It's natural for us to come to a place of fear and anxiety. You may have it right now. You may have had it this week. There may be all kinds of things going on that would be logical, just like it was logical to not winter in that harbor. It was logical to try and make it to the next island. But God says, this is what we say about fear. So we look at Philippians 4, 6, and 7. God says, do not worry about anything, or do not be anxious about anything. Now, we read this and we can probably quote it from memory, many of you. Be anxious about nothing, but in everything. Until there's stuff going on. Tells us, don't. Don't worry about anything unless you're on that ship with a storm for a bunch of days and you got no food and no, all that kind of stuff. Well, then you might need to worry. No. What about when you get that report from the doctor that shakes you to your core? And you go, well, I have the right to worry. Yeah, we do. But God's word says don't worry about anything. It's not don't worry about anything because you're going to get what you want. That's not what he says. Now, if I could rewrite it, that's what it would say. But he didn't give me the pen. He says, don't worry about anything, but in everything. So here's our instruction. Here's what we do when it gets that hard. But in everything, by prayer and supplication. What is that? By prayer and calling out to him. 6 in there. With thanks that he's in charge. Thankful that when I don't understand and I don't have the answer and I don't know how it's going to work out and I don't know any of that, he does. I can be thankful. So as I come to him and I'm saying, God, please help me. Please help us. I come to you with thanksgiving. And I'm telling you, when you make that choice, something happens inside. Something changes. You've opened up yourself to his Spirit to move. And to make you something you're not. That's when Philippians 4:13 happens. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. It doesn't say I can do all things. It says I can do all things through him who strengthens me, where he takes over when I'm done and I got nothing to offer and I can't do it. All right, Jan and I, we shared about this. We talk about it as we think about that verse. And we go, we got to get to that place where we can't do anything else before we really even get that verse. It seems so pleasant and so innocent. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. How do you know? Well, I don't know. Well, just wait. Just wait. till life kicks your teeth in, breaks everything in your body, takes everything from you, spits you out to dry, and then you'll know that you can do all things through Him who strengthens you. In everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. It's not like He doesn't want us to make them known to Him. He wants that. It's not because He doesn't know. It's that it's creating a dialogue. It's putting us in position to talk to Him and to listen to Him. And as that begins to happen, it says, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense when life has got you in that place where you got nothing, and yet you have His peace. And you go, well, that ain't make sense. No, it doesn't. He tells us that. It transcends understanding. It's supernatural. It surpasses understanding. That peace is going to guard your heart, and it's going to guard your mind. And all those thoughts that come in to attack and try and get us to go somewhere else in our mind, and somewhere else that God isn't enough, and that He can't fix this, and that He isn't in charge, and that I have to come up with a way to figure this out, and all those things. No, His peace guards my mind. And His peace guards my heart. And we hold on to that word. We look at Joshua 1:9. He says, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. Don't be dismayed. Who's it? We love that one. Man, Joshua goes and beats Jericho and all that. He was in a place he's scared to death. He's got to lead 1 million people across the Jordan, take on this fortified city where they have like soldiers, and he's got like nothing. He's got rugrats. They don't know what they're doing. They think they can't do anything. And God says, don't be afraid. He's going, I'm scared to death. That's the reason He told him that. And if you read chapter 1, He only tells him about 10 times. Don't be afraid. Be strong and courageous. For I have told you, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Be strong. I mean, He's like wearing him out on it. Why? He's scared to death. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to do it. How am I going to get them to follow me? They won't even pick up their manna right. They don't do anything right. Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. Don't be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Do you believe it, Joshua? Do you believe I'm really with you? And we can go, yeah, Joshua. But then there's me. Do I really believe He's with me? In this situation, when I see no hope? That's how we come against fear. And it is written. That's what Jesus did. Every time the enemy came at Him, it is written. It is written. It is written. These are good ones to memorize. Put it in your notes or your phone. Pull it up. Go over it. Say it to yourself. It is written. We're going to do the last one here. So Luke writes, and we all gave up hope. We gave up hope. I feel like God showed me in 2020, one of the areas that the enemy struck a blow in our society was it was like people lost their hope. There was a mindset of nothing can be done, and there's nothing we can do, and we're just subject to this virus and whatever. And to God, that is an affront. We're saying, oh, you're not big enough for this. You're not strong enough for that. We were the ones who were missing out. It doesn't mean there wasn't a virus. It doesn't mean people didn't get sick and that people passed. I get all that. It's real. No different than cancer or heart disease or whatever else that we deal with. but they're not above God. And we're in this era of life with the mantra of the media and all the that just gets put out there all the time. And as a believer, it's easy to go, God, where are you? There's no hope. That's a lie. That's a lie. Not because I think so, because I deal with thinking those things at times, quite regularly actually. Just go to school. Woo! You get your hope challenged sometimes. Yeah, but that's not what God's word says. God's word says for you, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. God has a plan for you, and because he has a plan for you, you have hope. Their hope was not that they would not drown in that ship and in that sea, that shipwreck and sea. That wasn't their hope. Their hope is that God's got us. Our hope is not that we won't die of cancer or of some disease or COVID or whatever the next thing is or whatever it is. That's not our hope. Our hope is that God has us. And he knows the day and the hour that I'm going to go be with him. And it'll be just right. However that occurs, he has a plan for me. Well, when I know that, I walk different. I got hope. There's a reason to get up. There's an excitement that ought to be seen in us because we know him. We know him. And so we have a life. There should be a light. He says, you are the light of the world. People should see that. Something's different. I love Romans 15:13. I love this verse. It says, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in faith so that you will overflow with hope. Not just kind of make its way up, is the glass half full or half empty? No, it's overflowing with hope by the power of his Holy Spirit. Now, I truly believe a critical part of this is in that Philippians 4, 6, and 7 thing where we take our request to him with thanksgiving. There's a critical element there because I can go to him and whine and fuss and bellyache and cry. And I'm not saying he doesn't listen. I'm not saying that he won't answer in spite of me. But that's not what he's calling me to. He's calling me to come to him with these requests with thanksgiving. And that there is to be discourse back and forth, me and him, me talking to him and him answering me. And as he answers me, I begin to have hope. Oh my goodness. He's aware. He's aware of this situation. And he has an answer for this situation. He may not tell you exactly how it all plays out. He's God. He gets to do what he wants. But I got hope. I got hope that overflows because I've spent time with the one who is life. And that's what, as we continue to read 27, we're going to see Paul do. We today, I started with the sunrise, and here we go with the sunset. He's the God who created the sunrise, and he's the God that created the sunset. He's the one who makes them both beautiful in their way and in who he is. He's just doing what he does. And that's what he's doing with us in our lives. And he allows difficult things to come in there to get us to wake up and to cry out to him with thanksgiving. This new chapter of life that you're in right now, whatever chapter that is. Some of you got little kids. Some of you got teenagers. Some of you got empty nest. Some of you are, getting grandkids and great-grandkids. Every chapter has been written by God for you. So there's hope. Live life today. This window of whatever chapter you're in right now, it'll come to a close at some point. Let's be all he is calling us to be in this chapter today. Let's close in prayer. Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for allowing us to read about Paul and Luke, Aristarchus, and their journeys and the difficulties and the challenges. And sometimes we just got to stop and think through what they went through, and to see how it's really no different than what we're going through. The causes may be different. Circumstances may be different. But life is life, and life is hard. But you have called us to not be afraid. You have told us not to be anxious about anything. You have called us to come to you and to share our struggles, but to do it with thanksgiving. And then you have told us that we can count on the fact that by your Holy Spirit, you will cause us to have a hope that overflows. I pray, Lord, that it is overflowing on all the people around us, that will whet their appetite, cause them to desire you and to want to know you and to come into the kingdom. Thank you for such a call, for such a responsibility that makes our life worth living. It's in your Son Jesus' name.